Coming up, we're reacting to Apple WWDC.
You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Double Tap with me, Stephen Scott. Shaun Preece is here. How you doing, Shaun Preece?
Oh, I'm emotionally spent. Another WWDC. What a roller coaster ride. Up, down, left, right. It was amazing.
Was it though? Well, we're going to get into this. It's the morning after the night before for you guys listening to this and watching this on YouTube. For us, we're recording this just after the event, so you are literally getting our raw feelings, our raw emotion about WWDC. And with us, we have some very special guests who are joining us throughout the whole thing. We should have recorded the whole thing and broadcast it, because I think our reactions might have been more interesting than this conversation. With us as all the way from Texas, but recently was in my hometown of Scotland. Shelly Brisbin is here with us, author and broadcaster. How are you doing, Shelly?
I'm great. Your hometown of Scotland was very pleasant to me. The weather was much cooler than it is here in my hometown of Texas. Yes, here I am.
That sounds about right. And Carrie Morales joins us all the way from, where are you, Carrie?
Somewhere. No, just kidding. North Carolina. Yep.
North Carolina. Okay,
it's way too hot here.
Wait, we don't know what that means, do we, Shaun?
No, it's fine. My heart bleeds for you.
Shall we talk about WWDC? Look, before we get into it, Shelly, what was your expectation going into this? Because I listened to about 14 podcasts before this. I caught up on every single thing I could think of. I actually ran out of YouTube to watch because there was just so much conjecture about this. Mark Gurman released a lot of details, which kind of leaked a lot. What was your expectation going into this? Did you think it was going to be a big deal this year?
I'll be honest, I tried not to watch 14 podcasts and YouTube videos because the sort of pre-WWDC pundit industrial complex has made me a little tired. I read Gurman, and I knew some things were going to happen, and that this liquid glass, which we will talk about, was a thing. And so I had some pre-prepared responses, which turned out to be appropriate. And I was really curious to see how they were going to address Apple Intelligence. And I am intrigued by what they did, but not necessarily for the right reasons. So I don't know that there were any surprises, to be honest, because there was so much punditry out there, even if, like me, you were trying not to read everything you could get your hands on. Yeah,
I was exactly the same. Carrie, what about you? Were you catching up with it all, or were you just wanting to hold on to the event and actually see what they announced?
I had absolutely zero preparation. I had no expectation. I came into it cold and still feeling the same.
Oh, right. Don't spoil the ending. Okay, so let's get into it then. So Apple, of course, WWDC, for those that don't follow along with this, for those who come to us for the news, it's the Worldwide Developer Conference. It's all about the developers of the apps, right? That's what it's all about, Shaun. It's not about hardware necessarily, and we don't often see hardware at these kind of events, do we?
No, not unless it's something new that the developers, it's almost an introduction to new hardware to the developers, such as the Vision Pro or the Apple Watch back in the day. But this is purely software. This is what's coming up in the next version, in the upcoming version of, all the platforms in this case, but usually most of the major ones.
Well, let's start with some of the big leaks, and they were around the naming conventions of these operating systems we all know and love, iOS, tvOS, iPadOS, all of that. They were all going to be renamed. The numbers were going to be renamed from iOS 19, which we thought we might see. Instead, it was going to be iOS 26, iPadOS 26. This was all leaked out ahead of time, so not a huge shock for all of us. Is this exciting to anyone?
It was a shock for me. I didn't know, and I actually kind of like it. It's
well,
a lot
you really
easier.
were unprepared.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I was very unprepared. I like
That's
it.
good.
It's a lot easier. You don't have to remember which version is on what device and everything, so I kind of like it.
I think it makes sense. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the hardware, because one of my bugaboos has always been that the phone numbers are one behind the OS numbers, and that was always sort of weird. And so what are we going to do with iPhones and Macs and TV, new devices that they come out? Are they just going to call them Ultra, Max, Super and do away with numbers? Or are they going to call it the iPhone 26 or whether, that remains to be seen. But I think it was a good idea. I did think it was funny because macOS has the tradition of having a name back to the old late lamented Cats that I miss so much, and then on to California Places. And the name for macOS, Tahoe, was leaked early. And of course, my instant thought was, so Mac is now a Jeep? Or can I get the macOS in my Jeep? Or, what? In my big SUV, my sister has a Tahoe. So I was like, okay, well, there you go. We're going to run that on macOS. So, not a big scoop, but I know people in the tech world just sort of love any kind of Mac leaks, any kind of Apple leak, I should say. And so I guess it's fun for some people, and seems like a good thing.
I think so. I think it makes total sense. Now, I thought when I initially heard this rumor, I thought, no, they won't do that because it immediately dates any OS, right? But considering they always update it every year anyway, it makes no difference. I think you're right, Shelly. I think they should bring it in line with the hardware. It makes you know exactly what you're dealing with. I was kind of disappointed when they announced the Tahoe name for macOS as well. Oh, you're making it uniform across the board, watchOS 26 and iOS 26, iPadOS 26. It makes sense. So I was kind of disappointed that they stuck the Tahoe on there.
No one cares. I mean, it's just an identifier.
Yeah, I don't think anybody cares. And I forget. I used to know, like I say, my late beloved cats, I could tell you, tiger, lion, mountain lion, leopard, but I can't remember whether last year was Sonoma or Catalina or Mavericks. I kind of can, but I have to look it up.
Well, I'm on the one about trees, and I only know it was trees because I had to look that up. I didn't know what a sequoia was.
But that's what I mean. No one remembers. Hello. What year was that? Was that the one before, or was that? I just wish they'd move away from that and just stick with the year.
Well, to be fair,
the name.
The 26 number is going to make much more sense because the thing I have always forgotten since it became relevant was what macOS number we were at. And that became a problem because sometimes I would go and try to get an app and it would say, what are the minimum requirements for it, or which version of it should you download based on whether you're running macOS 15.2 or 16. And like, wait, what am I running? I don't even remember. I just know the names. So it's like, pick one. Names or numbers, please.
Yeah,
I do like having both. It kind of reminds me of Android. I'm going to just slip a tiny bit of
Android into this.
Oh, here she goes. She's off.
The candy naming system. I was sad to see that go, and I'm just
same. I like the candy for Android.
I really like the names. I think it's poetic and it adds a sense of emotion into it. I like that.
Okay.
Emotion, I think. I'll tell you, my thinking is it's not going to go down. They're not going to go down the same route with the hardware. I don't think they will, and I'll tell you why. Because they brought out the iPhone 16e, and I think they don't update that on a yearly basis, right? So I find that an interesting choice of numbering for that phone. It was the iPhone SE. Why not keep it that way? Why bring the number into it? Because you've immediately dated that phone. So unless they are going to change it all in the future, and the 16e is just a one-off. I mean, I don't really know. I'll be honest, I watched this whole event thinking, did Apple even know what they're doing anymore? Have they remembered who they are? Because there was a lot of this, I was kind of thinking, wow, we're really clutching at straws here. Let's talk about Apple Intelligence, because I think a lot of us were thinking, I was certainly thinking, maybe this is the year that, Apple, Tim Cook walks out, kneels down in front of the audience and says, I'm so sorry, we'll make it better, I promise. Of course, they were never going to do that. Instead, we got, updates and suggestions that things are getting better and, stay tuned and improvements are coming and that stuff.
Didn't you think it was interesting they kicked off right away with Apple Intelligence, almost, addressing all the rumors and criticism and,
let's get that out of the way
it.
Because the basic thing they told us was, more stuff is coming in a year. And so we got a few little updates and a few updates in terms of how Apple Intelligence interacts with apps, but most of it was down the road. And they literally wanted to kick the football and not have us pay any attention. Hey, now let's talk about this other thing over here. Look here. Don't look there. Look here.
Well, look, we can get into all the nuances of each operating system, and we will, but I want to ask you both, well, all three of you actually, I want to ask you, what do you think in terms, when it comes to Apple Intelligence? I know geeks like us are like, oh, we want it to be better. And it kind of clouds our enjoyment of the event, right? Because we're kind of waiting for the killer Siri feature to come, or the killer Siri, quite frankly, to be just coming out, and that would be it. And that's really all our focus, certainly for me, has been on. Do you think, though, for the average consumer, they really care about this?
The struggle I have is I have such mixed feelings about AI in general, and I'm quite aware that Apple was really forced to address it and probably didn't want to, because you had ChatGPT and you had Google with Gemini, and they had to do it. And it's gone so far now that whether we want to or not, we're sort of thinking about AI like pundits do, rather than whether it's something that's an essential part of the way we use these devices. And for me, it's not. Like, it's a plaything. And have I gotten some useful things from AI? Sure, I have. But it hasn't changed my life. It hasn't changed the way I do computing because, as I say, I have real mixed feelings about it. I think AI is something that is absolutely essential to enterprises and to big business, and that to consumers, we're being sort of brought along as, oh, yeah, well, there's this thing called AI and it's really awesome. Because, now every advertisement you hear for a tech company or every sponsorship is, it's full of AI. And the benefits are much greater to organizations than to individuals. But unfortunately, it means that the tech that we love has to kind of follow along and give us AI, and that most of our reactions are based on what our expectations, how we feel about the company. We don't want Apple to fail if we like Apple things, so they have to do AI. It's not that would I like Siri to be better? Sure, I would. But that's kind of different than, do I need image playgrounds, or do I need even visual intelligence, which I actually think is really interesting. But do I need these things in a really fundamental way, in the way that business does? And I don't think I do yet.
Carrie, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, is it actually important that Apple Intelligence is good today rather than being good down the line? Do you think consumers care?
I don't think the average consumer really cares about it too much unless they're already using AI in such a way that it's beneficial for them. So for me, I literally use AI every single day. I use Gemini for video, for reading things for me and for my son. I use AI just frequently and for a lot of different things. Of course, there's a lot of oversight you have to do because AI still makes mistakes, but it has proven to be extremely, extremely useful for me, especially as somebody who's visually impaired. And I think that what I am most looking forward to, and I think that a majority of people would, is a better Siri, is something that can be practical. And who's going to really play with Image Playground that much? How is that actually going to impact your life that much? How many flyers do we get and we want to add to our calendar? I mean, yes, that's great and all, but I just want Siri to work. I just want an assistant.
You can now mix a woman and a turtle together and create your own emoji or Genmoji or whatever the hell that is. What is that, Shaun? I know you were following that intently.
Intently. I just tuned out at that point. Do you know what, though? I think it is more, actually, it's not just, they just sort of dodged a bullet when it comes to AI. I think actually there were some really interesting uses of AI in there, and we'll get to that as we go through each OS. I think that the actual AI, you could argue that it's used in a better way. Yes, Image Playgrounds, we're not bothered by that at all, but there's some really interesting uses of AI. We're always looking at, as you both mentioned, Carrie and Shelly, the sort of the voice assistant side of things. But actually, AI is more than that. But to answer your question, Stephen, I think actually it's the geeks that are really interested in that, just talking to tech, and also the people that aren't really that interested who want that way to interact with technology as well. I think it's mostly the people in the middle that don't care. So I think if you compare something like, just take AI, the letters out of it, and just say a voice assistant. I mean, comparing Gemini to Siri there's no competition there. So I think people will actually take notice of that. I think Apple do need to address that at some point.
Well, one thing they might be interested in is the new design across all the operating systems. I can't wait to talk about this. So liquid glass is the new phrase you're going to hear a lot from Apple over the next few months. And that's because that's the new design language or style or material or whatever you want to call it that is going to be rolling out across every single operating system. They say it's the first major visual update since iOS 7 was one of the first to get that, of course. And then, of course, everything expanded out from there with macOS and everything else. But yeah, this is the first major redesign across the entire operating system. It goes along with the number change. Okay, I have to say, for Shaun and I don't think there's much we can say because I certainly couldn't see anything of value here for me. Certainly nothing I could even see about this.
Just couldn't see anything.
You two are low vision, so I'm kind of really keen to hear your takes on this from that low vision perspective. Carrie, tell me your first thoughts.
I absolutely detest it. It's as plain and simple as that. So it's really hard to see. It's something that I know that I'll immediately turn off if I'm assuming that there's an option for that, since currently there is an option to turn off transparency. And with liquid glass, everything is transparent. It's not just the background of the text, but even the elements. So if there's supposed to be usually a background to a button, it's now gone. You just see the image behind whatever element that is. And so that's really difficult for me to see. There's a lot of more floating windows, floating buttons, some that disappear. I'm assuming there's a way to turn that off as well. Some contextual dynamic things that appear sometimes and don't appear other times. And that's just going to be, I think, extremely difficult for somebody that has low vision, and I don't know how it'll impact a voiceover user for those things that just keep changing where their location, and so that's a little concerning for me.
So I am somebody who was around for iOS 7, and which iOS 7 is still a formative bad experience in my life. So my level of trust was low, and having the rumors ahead of time to sort of think about was helpful to me because I didn't see this today and become apoplectic instantly. For me, it's also difficult to see. I will say that the way it was introduced in these sort of very stylized here, these are pretty screens, these are desktops, these are lock screens, these are home screens. The way it was introduced in that way, and then the way you saw demonstrations of other features within iOS or with all the OSs later in the demo were different experiences. So the initial stylized stuff was very transparent, very color focused, very much as Carrie described it, things that are floating around, contextual window placement and behavior. But when we got down into, say, let's look at maps or let's look at messages or whatever app they were talking about, I found the screens much easier to follow. And I was paying attention to that because Apple is very much focused on that sort of what they call beauty and delight and all that sort of visual stuff that is either meaningless or absolutely a problem for those of us with low vision. And I was heartened a little bit by the fact that some of the interface stuff later on was easier to see. I didn't like what they did with the dock in macOS because I like my dock background. It helps me find things. But I feel like I'm sure that there'll be ways to turn it off. Something I wrote on Mastodon yesterday that I think absolutely applies here is that I said I judge visual accessibility in 2025 not based on whether it exists, but how much fiddling around I have to do in settings to make it so that I can use it. Do I have to turn off transparency? Do I have to turn on increased contrast? Do I have to use smart invert colors and dark mode at different times? How many different hoops do I have to jump through to make it so that my devices are usable? And I feel like, unfortunately, that there are going to be accessibility challenges that are going to require a lot of toggling things on and off, which means that my low vision chapter in my next version of my book is going to be about 1,000 pages.
I totally understand you, Shelly. One thing that I was thinking actually during the time and seeing all these transparencies is I wonder if there's going to be some type of a slider where you can adjust how much transparency. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
However, right now, as it stands, my iPhone, I have all of the options turned on: increase contrast, turn off transparency, yada, yada, yada. And there are still elements that are like white on yellow. And I'm just like, but I can't see that. None of the different options that are available like fix everything. And it just makes a lot of things difficult, I think. And that's a struggle for me, just using iPhone generally, even with all those available options. One thing, though, I'm wondering with the liquid glass is, will it be able to better and more easily force developers to provide a dark mode? So that would be like the one compelling feature, I think.
I don't know if it'll force them. I wonder about that too. I didn't see anything in what Apple presented that would indicate that it would force them. Obviously, there are different ways to implement dark modes, and there are, especially, they showed a screen in macOS where it was super dark. It was so dark, in fact, that I couldn't follow it because it was on the screen for a very short time. But I don't get the sense that that's necessarily endemic to what they announced. I wondered the same thing about oh, I'm sorry, it's escaping my brain now. I wonder about, there's a feature called differentiate without color in iOS, which basically means that if you have icons that are only identified, this is the blue one, this is the yellow one, and knowing that color tells you what to do, you can turn that off. But that's a choice a developer has to make. And I actually know of very few apps that have gone ahead and said, oh, well, let's recognize the differentiate without color toggle. I can think of one app. There might be a few more, but are those kinds of things, we're going to have to, as low vision folks, unfortunately, probably have conversations with developers that are highly specific about why liquid glass is not good for us.
Yes.
It's a really interesting take. I just couldn't really get anything from this. And I will say, this was the first WWDC where I kind of felt disconnected from it, because that visual theme of liquid glass runs right through everything. I suppose it does make sense, like from a mainstream point of view. Everything seems familiar. Each device, be it an Apple Watch or a Mac or even CarPlay, has the similar look and feel to it, using that liquid glass theme. But obviously, for me, it's like, this means nothing to me. I'm confident that there will be a way to turn off transparency and just, basically give it a background color or whatever. But I am, like Carrie, worried about the floating aspects of the UI. I'm just not too sure about that and how that's going to affect me as a VoiceOver user. But
So just really quickly, the reason that I always mention iOS 7 and that I thought it was interesting that they mentioned it today was because what happened with iOS 7 is a very difficult to use visual interface came out. All the fonts were very thin. It was very much white background. There was no opportunity to create a dark mode. It was miserable. And then what happened is they came out with 7.1, which is the source of most of the accessibility, the low vision related accommodations. That's where we got increased contrast and reduced transparency. All that stuff happened in one release. And my joke at the time was, it's the only time an iOS release has ever come out that was exclusively for me, and it was fixing things that were broken. And so I think it'll be important for those who have Apple's ear to make sure that they say what it is specifically about the liquid glass interface that is causing issues, and to the extent we can, figure out what kind of communication we're going to have with developers. But it begins with Apple. It begins with saying to them, this is not only that it doesn't work, but this is why. Because I've found them to be responsive, but sometimes you have to tell them things that they don't necessarily know, or that the people who do know those things may not have the right ears.
Yeah, it all looks pretty. It's all lovely and pretty, but, is it accessible? And there's the big issue which comes up all the time now, and that is what is fully accessible, right? Because your perspectives today are really interesting in this debate, because, and this wasn't intentional. You two were booked in before we kind of knew about the liquid glass thing. It kind of just really interesting that the design is kind of the focus of this whole event. It's more of a low vision nightmare, I guess, in some ways. Okay, if you can turn it all off, that's great. But then what do you get out of it? That's what I kind of think that's the other side of this. What do you get out of these new updates? if there's no visual change because you have to switch everything off.
Well, and I also don't feel like they did a very good job of making the case of how there is a visual through line. Most of the demos, especially the stylized ones at the top, were iOS and iPadOS, and those already look very similar because they're basically the same thing. And they didn't, and they showed some macOS and visionOS demos later on, but I don't think they made a very good case for why they're doing this as a through line really helps usability for people who either maybe don't know these platforms or who know one platform and don't know the other platform. So it's like the thing that they are doing this for wasn't really a case that I think they made very effectively.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other stuff that was announced, some updates, and we'll stay with some of the top-level stuff at the minute. We'll dive in a bit more to the individual operating systems in a minute, but Visual Intelligence got some updates as well. And one of them, Carrie, I think we can call this Circle to Search from Google, basically brought to the iPhone. A very similar thing, which means you can literally draw on the screen to circle to search for something, say a pair of shoes or a bag or whatever it might be on the screen or an image, you could sort of choose it. Well, this way is a little bit more, I think, accessible in the sense that you take a screenshot and now we can just fill our phones up with even more screenshots, but we can also query the screenshots for the products or the images within them.
Absolutely. I think because you have to take a screenshot to utilize visual intelligence, it will be inherently more accessible. I think the circle to search, there's some issues with TalkBack and compatibility. I also really like the fact that you can specify an app to search in. So, okay, I want to specifically search on Etsy, or I want to specifically search on Google. And I'm not super sure if that's even possible on Android at the moment. You're pretty much forced to use Google. And so I thought that was a really neat feature, though, again, like everybody's mentioned, what are they going to do with the screenshots? It's just going
Hopefully
to
delete them.
Yeah.
As soon as it's done. Because, it's that whole thing now when you copy a screenshot, you can copy and delete, and I quite like that. I think that's quite useful. Shelley, again, I'm kind of being a bit selfish on this, but I think with VoiceOver, that's going to make a lot more sense than Circle to Search with TalkBack.
Yeah, I think from a low vision point of view, though, I don't know the answer to this yet. I think the fact that you had so many different things that you could do. Once you take that screenshot, you have so many options in visual intelligence. It's either really awesome because you can do so many things, or it's, oh my God, that's too much stuff. And I don't know which it is yet. I like visual intelligence as an idea, as sort of a catch-all. I'm sort of a little disappointed because I mean, I have a new enough phone that I have an action button, and I want to put that on the action button. I use screenshots all the time for other things, but I assume there'll be an alternative. It's probably a minor thing, but I'm like, wait, why don't you just put that back under the action button and let me have my screenshots? Because I'm used to taking screenshots for a number of purposes that aren't visual, but that's a minor thing. That's just a Shelly problem and not an OS problem.
Sounds a bit like the magnifier problem to me. It's like, they just keep adding things into things. It's like, just shove it in there. It's
true. It's like, where do we put stuff? And Magnifier is the absolute best example of an app that is just crazy overloaded. It's going to tip over in its own weight.
We're going to dive into the operating systems in just a second. A quick mention though to the Apple Design Awards that are ongoing and have completed now. The inclusivity category had two particular winners that I want to mention. Speechify, which is great for PDFs if you want to read them aloud, great for reading text articles online. They won in the inclusivity category. And Land of Livia, the game that we were talking to the developer of just recently, Shaun, they're a finalist. And they were also at WWDC this year, which is just wonderful. So well done to them. Look, you're listening to Double Tap. Stick around. We're going to be right back to talk more about WWDC next.
This is Double Tap. We'll be right back.
Thanks to our friends at Hable, Double Tap listeners get 15% off the Hable One and Hable Easy, but only for a limited time. The Hable One makes navigating your phone faster, easier, and more private with a tactile braille keyboard that fits in your pocket. It's perfect for writing texts, using apps, and keeping your phone tucked away with a full month of battery life. Or go with the Hable Easy, the simple remote for people who don't want to mess with complicated gestures. Big, clearly labeled buttons make it easy to do the basics, open apps, send messages, and use voice commands. No steep learning curve, no frustration, just tech that works. Get your 15% discount now at doubletaponair.com/Hable.
This is Double Tap. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. Now we are talking about WWDC and we're talking about the operating system updates that will be coming. Now look, these updates are not going to be coming immediately. So everything we're telling you about, you're going to hear about in lots of other shows. Everyone's going to be talking about it. If you're listening to other tech podcasts, I mean, why would you bother?
What?
But if you do, I know. But if you do, you might hear people talk about this, but they're not going to be coming out till later this year. And we'll get into more about what we know about these as we go along. But we're just kind of giving you the highlights and the headlines from WWDC this year, the things we do know that are coming. Let's talk about iOS. Shelly, first up. I know you were taking copious notes.
They're
Anything
not very
stand
good
out?
notes, but there are a lot of them.
No, I'm the same. They'll do the job. But what have you got in yours?
And a lot with iOS was new design stuff. So it was things like backgrounds and messages, which was just horrifying to me because that meant the mixed mash of colors you could accidentally create for yourself is without sort of dwelling on the bad. I think one thing that was interesting, and they didn't really call it out this way, but they do seem to be, every operating system update seems to give you more integration between the various communications apps. And so FaceTime and calls are sort of functionally becoming a lot less distinct. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But it just means that they're trying to prioritize things like recents and favorites and just make it easier for you to call those few people you actually want to talk to, however you're doing it. I kind of like that stuff. I just, the little sort of organizational things. And of course, my snarky comment at the time was, if they're focusing on things like how the phone app is laid out, they don't have a lot going on. I like some of those layout things, but some of the design stuff, I think a lot of the design stuff seems more apparent in iOS just because you're on more different kinds of screens than you might be on a Mac. At least that's my experience. So a lot of the things that sort of made me twitchy about the liquid glass design were pretty prominent in iOS.
Okay. Shaun, obviously from the Mac, or not the Mac, but the Apple perspective, I guess the iPhone is the thing that rules in your life, right? Because that's what you're using.
Yeah, of course.
So what were you looking forward to in iOS 26?
26. That was
okay, I
still
get used to
throwing
that.
me. Yeah.
I know.
Actually, I want to go back to the phone app. I think, and throw in a little bit of Apple intelligence. The Hold Assist I thought was really interesting, actually. So you know all those, and the on hold music that they played is music I am so familiar with as well. I've been sat on a phone call for hours. You're number 26 in the queue. So the Hold Assist.
That'd be ironic, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, it's in my brain. So the Hold Assist feature will actually just keep your position there, but you can, basically like that you've closed down that phone call, and it will ring you back when it's time for you, when someone actually picks up that call. So I actually really like that. Also what was it called? The call screener?
Call screen.
Yes, very, very Android-like, as Carrie pointed out.
All of it's very Android-like, isn't it?
Yeah. But the ability, to actually, basically it will ask an unknown number, what they want, basically, and then give you a call and display it on the screen. So I did actually really like that. But again, like Shelly said, kind of really picking to find something that really stood out to me. But I did like those features.
Okay, Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Android copying here, which I think is very good. I really am interested actually in the call screening and the hold assist, and I want to compare it to how Pixel does it, because you can have a conversation with somebody through text, but in a phone call. So that's something that I wonder if that will work on iOS. I also found it really interesting, the live translation. It seemed a little slow to me.
Even in the demo, it seemed slow, right?
In the demo, it seemed a little slow, but I mean, that could still definitely be useful. I wonder how many languages will be supported. And I'm also slightly disappointed if you have a live translation I wish Apple would come out with a live transcribe equivalent, because that's something that would be extremely helpful for accessibility.
Can you just explain the difference there, Carrie?
Yes, so my brother's actually deaf, and so I there's an app on Android where you can use the microphone and speak into it. It will just transcribe and write everything that you're saying down, and somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing can view that and see what's happening around them or what people are saying. So that's what I'm hoping for with iOS.
And I will say, the demo of the live translation, I think it was doing a FaceTime call between English and German. I mean, and it did seem slow. The German lady finished talking, and then a few seconds later we got the spoken translation. But it does appear on the screen, and it was translated, I think, on the live translation. But it was interesting that there was that delay there. That wasn't a live demo, right? So they could have made it appear instantaneous. So yeah, it makes me wonder if they're sort of setting expectations there that it is slightly slow.
Basically, not every call is going to be like being at the UN.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, I will say I liked it too, and it was also demoed in messages, so it works both in calls, which I guess is more impressive, but it'll also do it in text messages, and it'll speak. So if you want to communicate by voice when you're having a texting conversation, that's kind of cool, actually. I like that.
I want to mention a couple because there was one that stood out for me, and you would think, why on earth would the Apple Maps app take any kind of notice at an event like this? I think that might tell you all you need to know about the event. But there was a feature where you could create your own routes automatically. So if you were going on a route, and it's so funny that it mentioned this today, because today I had the chance to sit down with someone from Humanware and go through the Stellar Trek, and one of the things it can do is it can record routes. And I was talking to someone about this from Humanware, and I said, it's really cool. That's a really cool feature. And then I sit down in front of WWDC, and the phone can do it for you automatically. So basically, it tracks where you're walking. It obviously is tracking your movements through the course of a day, and it will start to pick up on specific routes you go. Now, I don't know how good this is going to be for walking. I guess for car driving, it's going to be really good. If you're walking and you're going through paths, so you're walking through areas that, this was what we were talking about today with Humanware, how's it going to handle sort of going off-road, essentially, off the map? So, if I'm walking through a path that isn't on the map, how will that work? I'll be intrigued to see how this goes, but I like the idea of it kind of capturing those routes automatically, because it's something we've talked about many times on the show, is the challenge of sometimes following a route that you've done either already or with someone, and you want to be able to do that route again.
I was wondering whether it would work with walking directions also with transit. So if you have a mixed mode, if you're walking to the bus stop and then taking a bus and then transferring, will it recognize that in the same way that it would recognize a car trip? And if you're walking, don't forget that the recently in the last version of iOS, we did get this walking directions, which I haven't really used much, but it's supposed to basically track you even if you're off road. And I wonder if that was sort of a precursor to this, because it's not very useful to us if we don't have walking and or transit. And unfortunately, Maps has a history of announcing features that, oh, by the way, we forgot walking and transit, and they only apply to driving. So I hope that's not the case.
I mean, Google's better with this, Carrie, isn't it? I mean, I know that they added the advanced walking direction feature in Android just in the last year. And that was that. I mean, it was kind of buried in the settings. You had to enable it, but it's there.
Yes, it's there. I think it's location based right now, though. It's not available where I am, which is disappointing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how Apple does it.
I want to mention updated boarding passes. I know. Hold on to your seats, guys. Yeah, this is a feature where they are bringing up newer designs for boarding passes. And then they moved on from that, just at that point. And I don't know how it links, but they were kind of talking about buying things. I use an app every day called Parcel, and it's a great app. I can paste in delivery information straight in, and I can get updates on where my parcels are. Apple just killed it because they've brought this into the wallet, I guess. And before you would see orders through the Apple Store. Now they're bringing in orders from so they can essentially pull in that content from mail directly into, I guess, the wallet or through Apple Pay. I'm not quite sure how it's going to show up.
Is that only available with products that you buy with Apple Pay?
Well, that is interesting. If it's only through the Apple Pay purchases, then yeah, Parcel has some life left in it. It can be resuscitated.
I saved you, Parcel. It's fine.
Well done. Yeah. I kind of thought when I heard it at first, I thought that's been Sherlocked, to use a Shelly Brisbin phrase.
Yeah, I agree. But it's interesting that it lives inside the Apple Pay app. I think it's to do with Apple Pay. Oh, there's someone here.
Yeah, there you go. It's Apple Pay without the door. Okay, let's. Is that it for iOS? Can we move on to watchOS? Because I don't think there was much more to say on iOS, was there? Yep. Okay. So watchOS then. I want to mention Workout Buddy because that sounded pretty cool. So to my understanding, this was like you're getting. First off, they're bringing a lot of the functionality across fitness into a much more simplified interface on the watch, which I think is pretty cool. But also, it had this kind of AI fitness trainer thing kind of built in. So as you started a run, it would kind of. And at first, I thought, "Oh, this is ridiculous." And then Carrie said, "Actually, that sounds quite good." And then I kind of paid attention and thought, actually, it's not bad. So, yeah, you changed my mind on this, Carrie, because actually it's not a bad idea. This is like a fitness trainer which kind of keeps you going. It's all AI-based, but it's giving you information as you're going along. It gives you information. At the end, it will play music for you. It'll even introduce the music. It's like a DJ. It's quite cool.
I absolutely love it. If this really works, I would actually consider getting an Apple Watch.
You don't have an Apple Watch?
Wow.
I gave it away. Yeah.
Gave it away? Wow. That's what you do with Pixel watches, isn't it?
Oh, okay, calm down, you two.
This is a very, very practical use of AI for me. I'm all about goals and achieving those goals, setting, attainable goals and just I'm that person who writes tasks so that I can check them off. And I love that the AI has access to all of that information and can tell me, oh, this is what you've done. You've accomplished X, Y, or Z. Now, I do wish or hope that you can have it yell at you a little bit. It's like if you're slowing down and you tell it to, like, be hard on me, like, tell me to keep going.
Get off the couch, Shaun.
No, leave me alone.
Like, hey, it's time for you to get off of your chair now and go take a walk. I'm like, okay, fine. That would
It's
be.
not like this notification you always get on that thing, which always says it's time to stand.
Yeah.
And it actually makes me just say, I'm going to sit longer now just because you've said that.
It needs to actually speak to me. It needs to speak to me. Hey, you set this goal. I'm holding you accountable. Get up.
Wow, Shelly, is this the future we want? Are the robots taking over?
I like it because I'm an audio learner or a communicator. I get information through audio. And if you give me the health app and you tell me you worked out 3 of the past 5 days, I'll never see it or I won't pay any attention to it. But if it's in my ear and you go, you're doing really great. You've run the last 3 days. That's terrific. And if you also combine it with the Apple Maps thing and you say, I saw that you stopped on your route and you went to the ice cream store. That's bad. Don't do that. You need to get back running because you are a slagger.
It was really good. And this is exactly what AI should be doing, right? Presenting all that information that you don't have to swipe through because all the information's there on your Apple Watch.
It's all being proactive, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Telling you your heart rate, how many miles, that was your fastest lap in that demo that they did was great. Yeah, this is really good.
It would be
might as well just do what it did last time, which is pretty much call an ambulance because that's usually what it does with me. And I'm sitting still at the time.
Preemptively.
Yeah.
It would be also really neat if you could ask it while you're running, because something that's difficult for me is to either use voiceover or talk back or whatnot, or try to look at the screen while I'm doing something. And I'm just like, hey, I can just shout out, hey, like, how fast am I going right now? How much longer is this workout?
And maybe I care about a heart rate and you care about running speed, or there might whatever metric you're interested in. That's what I want you to, the watch to tell you.
Yes. Or tell me if I've reached a heart zone or heartbeat zone that's too fast. That kind of thing. I want it to tell me.
Yeah, you want it to be more, involved in it, right? Because it's got, like you're saying, it's got all the data. It's got everything, so it can be proactive. It can know your limits. It can know where you want to get to, when it's time to back off. Okay, maybe it's time to cool off for a little bit. You've kind of run too far.
And maybe it can,
never
right?
Say that to
Again,
me, but yeah.
This is all reaction. This is straight after surface level stuff, right? We don't know how deep this all goes yet.
It'll probably get smarter over time, though. That's the great thing about it. If you create an interface like this, it's only going to learn more, either about you or the interface, or the software itself will just get better and have more AI hooks in it.
But, when I ask it to call Shaun, it's still going to say, call Shaun mobile. Mobile is a place in Alabama. It's going to do that every time. That's all it does. So, on one hand, you get one thing, and on the other hand. The other one I thought was quite cool was notifications, because notification audio is interesting. Now, we've seen this on some other devices over time. Where basically can adjust the audio based on the where you are. So, I don't know how many times I've been in a really quiet place and my watch bings or, does something. And now it's going to be able to sort of work out, okay, it's in a quiet place. We can lower those notifications. This is all through a thing called Smart Stack, which I kind of understand. I guess it's like surfacing tools as it requires them on the front of the watch, on the watch face. Have I got that right?
Smart Stacks is basically just a stack of widgets. So you have several things that it could be. I mean, you could show a timer, you could show your messages, you could show, and you have some ability to choose those things. But I think what they were saying is that it would surface the one that's relevant to what's happening to you right now.
And
that's something that I would
Carrie.
not like, because I always remember how many swipes away do I need to go? How many times do I have to turn the page or whatnot? And so that I think having things dynamically change that way will actually sometimes be more difficult.
It's funny, both you and I, Stephen, said, yeah, I turned that off straight away. I don't even, I haven't really played with smart stacks, really.
I don't understand it, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of these
I
things
haven't
just
used
come
it
along.
either. I
don't
like the flick. So basically, you get a notification on your watch, and you flick to make it go away. Instead of I get notifications all the time, and I'm cooking or I'm walking or I'm doing something, and I don't really want to look at it. In fact, I want to go away so I can see the time. But now I can flick it, and I have my watch face again, and I know what time it is. I know what my heart rate is, or the temperature, or whatever it is that I have on my screen, and not a notification that Stephen texted me, because I'll talk to him later.
I wonder what that gesture actually is. Is it like when you feel like, there's a fly walking across my hand, and you flick it away or something like that?
You sort of flick your wrist the way it looked in the demo is he was flicking his wrist to the left, so like moving his whole wrist so that instead of the watch being on top of your arm, it would be over to one side.
That's interesting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a wrist rotation. It's just like Android Wear watches or something.
Okay.
I don't know. As long as on Android's
just like
best thing ever. Okay. No, that does sound pretty cool, actually, because that is one of the things that irritates me about the watches, especially is when you get those notifications, you got to press that crown in every time to try and get back to the watch face. And, sometimes it's taking you somewhere else. Sometimes you hit the wrong button by accident. I mean, it's the real world phenomenon, right? You're trying to quickly just grab and say, come on, just tell me the time. And you just can't get to it. And then suddenly it's telling you the time in haptic, which I cannot do. Apple TV. I want to mention this because Apple TV Plus, now you might think, well, okay, so what? I mean, there was again, the design update was really the big thing there. There was one thing that I did notice, automatic sign-in across devices. They're opening this up to more developers so that basically you can sign in on one device and then across Apple, you don't have to keep going and signing in. This is the bane of my life. Just recently got a new smart TV at home. And, my wife sits down, she says, I want to watch this. And of course, then I have to go through every single app on the TV and sign in again to every app. And then, of course, Netflix says, you've already signed in on 8,000 other devices, so clearly you're, hacking your own account. So, that's it. We're terminating everything. And you go, oh, no, it's actually me. Go through all this carry on. And, they have made it a little bit easy with QR codes, but I kind of just wish it was a simpler process. Sign in once, and that's it. And Apple TV is kind of allowing that. So I think that's pretty cool. Anyone got any thoughts on that? And then we'll move on to macOS.
I'm for it.
Yes,
Excellent.
exactly. I love it. Anything that makes me sign in less and not hit the forget password button is great.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And also, I really like that there's profiles. I didn't know that on Apple TV you didn't have profiles, but apparently that was an update that's really neat.
Yeah, they could really do with it on an iPad, but we'll get to that. macOS, Tahoe, of course, is the name. So what? Who cares? Yeah. First thing up, they're getting a phone app. We're getting the phone app.
I love
we can
that
make
so
calls.
much. I love it.
I'm surprised you didn't have one already, I'll be honest with you.
Well, the way you do it was with FaceTime. So you have to open up, and it's weird, because I make a lot of FaceTime audio calls in the course of my work in radio. And so I open up FaceTime app, and the first thing I see is my big old face. And I'm like, I don't need to see my face. I'm not making a video call. And in fact, half the time, because it's FaceTime, I'm not sure whether I'm going to accidentally make a video call that I don't want to. So you can right click and say make on audio call. But I just like it. It just makes sense. Make a call. Again, I think it's the unifying apps. It's not really relevant. Am I using FaceTime or am I using calls? I've set my contacts so that I know that this person has an iPhone, so I can use FaceTime to talk to them. But I love it because I use handoff all the time. Like so all the calls are based on my phone, but I make them on the Mac all the time because I record them, and so this is just a thing that probably most people won't care about, but that I love.
No, I like this one. I really like this, and I make all my calls from my. In fact, today I was making a call from the Mac. And the way you have to do it is so difficult in FaceTime, because if you make a call to, say, a landline number, you have to, enter the number, you hit enter on it, and then you have to go through a menu to get to the call using iPhone option, and then hope that's working because you've done all your settings properly so that the phone can actually be used that way. It's just a nightmare. So, the way they've done it with this, I think this is going to be a lot better. I think this is one thing I was actually quite excited about. There was a couple other things. Now, we heard a lot of rumors about Shortcuts, the Shortcuts app, becoming more intelligent and almost using AI, more natural language to create shortcuts. I don't know if that's entirely what we got. What's your reading on this?
I don't know that those are really shortcuts. I think it's just a smarter Spotlight, and maybe there are some shortcuts that underpin it that are built into the OS now. But yeah, it looked like it was just a smarter Spotlight. And then there's this thing called Quick Keys, which is hilarious because back in the day, there was a macro creation tool for the Mac called Quick Keys, which doesn't exist anymore, so they didn't Sherlock it. But I'll always think of CE Software's Quick Keys because I loved it back in the day, where you basically, in Spotlight, now you can type a couple of characters and it will open an app or get to a contact or whatever thing you've set it up to do. So this just seems like an addition to what Spotlight has always been able to do. And I hope it's smarter, because Spotlight, there's some things it's really good at and some things it's not really good at. Like it's very bad at file searching and stuff like that. You have to go into the Finder to do that. So yeah, and I think there's some shortcut hooks in there. The one thing I like that they said about shortcuts actually is that it would use AI generated information to inform your shortcuts. So you make a shortcut that says, do this thing based on information that ChatGPT has provided. I actually can't think of a good example, but the idea is instead of your variable being something that you've typed and hardwired in there, it looks at the ChatGPT output and edits the shortcut appropriately and does the thing that you've asked it to do. So that could potentially be really cool.
Yeah, Shortcuts didn't feel like it was getting the kind of AI functions I was kind of hoping for, Shaun, because I was looking for, like I just want a shortcut to do X or
You're
Y.
looking for vibe coding is what you're thinking of. An AI interface where you can just say, I want a shortcut to do this, like you said.
And it goes off and does it, yeah.
And we didn't get that. As Shelly said, it was just a shortcut function, really, of the ability to hook into, on-device AI as well, Apple Intelligence, as well as ChatGPT, to sort of get input for a shortcut function. So
I don't want to look past the Spotlight thing too quickly, though, because
Spotlight was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Spotlight, the things that are coming to that feature, Command Space on a Mac gets you to Spotlight. And it's funny, every time I read these, 15 things you never knew you could do with a Mac, it always amazes me that's still in there, but people probably still don't know it even exists. But yeah, Spotlight is a pretty powerful tool, but like you say, Shelly, mixed results. It's good for finding an app, kind of quickly sometimes, but then you end up, if you don't have the app, you end up in some weird place, or you end up in a dictionary, or it's like strange places you get flung. But they're looking to improve that. Now, I use an app, and a lot of our friends, Michael Babcock, of course, who's on here regularly, uses Launchbar. Launchbar, I think, has been kind of Sherlocked here because, Quick Keys is something that's a big deal in Launchbar. That's how most of us use that, using a very simple thing like SM for send mail. And then you can even just in there, you can actually put in the information and it'll just do it all in Spotlight. You don't even have to open the Mail app, which is kind of interesting. We'll get into how that works a little bit more once it comes out. Clipboard History was another one. Now, that was a big reason to have Launchbar, and they're bringing that into the Spotlight as well. So there's lots of things. AI generation tools within apps, so you can use Spotlight. Say you're creating a document, you can use the writing tools feature through Spotlight. I thought that was quite interesting. I think this was kind of the space where I felt we're starting to see some really useful tools coming out of Apple Intelligence. We're all kind of expecting the new Siri, but actually this is the stuff that kind of matters, I think. Stuff that matters to making the experience better, really using AI in a practical sense. That's my take on it.
I thought it was interesting that they used Spotlight inside an actual app, and it was able to find the action in the menu. So it was almost like an item chooser, but more, like on steroids, really. It was, they've just made it far more powerful. So it'd be interesting to get hands on.
Literally 2.5 minutes left, and there's so much more we could talk about. But iPad, we must mention. iPad got Windows.
Yes.
Let's clarify that. So Windows, now you can have little windows like you do on like
Windows.
MacBook. And on Windows. They improved the Files app as well. So it sounds to me like, and by the end of it, when we saw like you could have floating windows and there was a menu bar option now, and, you had the dock, and you had, you could have this Files app, you could share files across things, and you could, add files to the dock. It sounded like they just invented the MacBook, really. That's kind of exactly what they did. They brought a touchscreen MacBook to life. Is this it, Shelly? Is the MacPad coming?
Well, this is sort of the fourth time is the charm thing, because they have tried various windowing endeavors, including Stage Manager, the past couple of years, and they changed it once and they changed it again. And we saw some things that are part of Slide Over and Split View that are already there. I'm looking forward to trying it because I liked the way it looked and I liked the way it seemed to behave. But the proof is in the pudding. Like once you actually sit down, and does it work the way can I actually have multiple windows open at the same time and do real work on my iPad? I don't know. I was also excited that you can apply those windows to external displays. So if you're using a big old studio display or some other monitor with your iPad, all that iPad windowing, you're right. You just created the MacBook. Never mind.
Final word to you, Carrie. Thoughts on iPad?
I really don't have much thoughts, except maybe I'll pull out my MacBook one of these days and compare it and see how it works. It's collecting dust at night now.
One final thing that I think was quite cool was the audio input function. So you can have, and there was some really cool stuff there, actually using AirPods to record studio quality vocals. Can't wait to see how that works.
Yeah.
Being able to use different microphones, you've got different audio input options, certainly proing it up a little bit. They were kind of mentioning podcasters and the ability to local record on Zoom calls and things like that. That was quite interesting.
It turned it into a Mac.
Quite a lot. Yeah, basically turned it into a Mac. Listen, that's it for us today, but a lot to think about and certainly a lot to react to for sure. We started off thinking, can we get through an hour here? But
we ran out of time.
We did it. As always, to both of you, thank you so much for your time, Carrie Morales and Shelly Brisbin. Wonderful to have you back with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
And we're back tomorrow with more Double Tap. Catch you then. Thanks, Shaun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.